Well, the day has come. It is election season. The election for the Virginia primary election is this Tuesday, June 17th. This Tuesday, we will elect those representatives that we want to represent our parties, both Republican and Democrat, in the general election. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're listening to our 2025 primary election preview series. Today we have with us none other than my good friend and no stranger to this station, our senator from Virginia Beach, who's running to be your next lieutenant governor, here to make sure you get out and vote. Senator Rouse, thank you for joining us here on Stay the Water.
Thank you, Dr. Claville, for having me once again. It's great to be back on with you.
Absolutely. Look, before we continue with this Get Out the Vote show for this year's primary election, I want to first of all wish all the fathers, including yourself, a happy Father's Day. You know, this is a day where we look back and we honor and think about the great men in our lives, you know, and those, whether it's our natural fathers, whether it's our stepfathers, whether it's that mentor that was in our lives, those individuals that helped us to get to where we are. Happy Father's Day to all of you.
Indeed. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there.
Absolutely. Well, you know, for those persons that have been listening to this show since last month to this month, they know that this is our election primary show. And in this particular series, we've highlighted elections across the entire state, but also more specifically in Hampton Roads, in the 7 cities in which there are some very important elections taking place locally. But this year, we have our primary election where we're going to elect in November. In November, we're going to elect a new governor on November 4th, a new lieutenant governor, a new attorney general, and we have all 100 seats of the House of Delegates that's up for election. Now, you know, when we take a look at what's happening, the House of Delegates is a very important part of our government, 3-tier government that we have here in the Commonwealth, very similar to our federal. And the House, the General Assembly, and the House can basically create laws and create policies and provide budgets that either help our people or hurt the people here in the Commonwealth. Right. You know, so of course we know that early registration for voting in this particular election has ended, and early in-person voting has also ended. It ended actually Saturday, just yesterday. So those individuals who are registered to vote, you can go out and vote now on Tuesday, on Election Day for, again, the candidate that you want to represent you, your party, in the upcoming election itself. Now, of course, here in this area, we have the governor. That nominee is set both on the Republican and Democratic side. We have on the Republican side our current lieutenant governor, Winston Earl Sears, that is representing the Republican Party for governor. And on the Democratic side, we have former U.S. Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, who's representing the Democratic Party for governor. But on the Democratic side, we have a couple of seats that are available, a couple of nominees here. So lieutenant governor and also attorney general. And, of course, on the Republican side, the lieutenant governor position is available. But we also have on there, we have the AG's position, which is our current AG, Jason Miyares, who is going to represent the Republican Party on that side. So today we have with us one of the candidates for lieutenant governor, none other than our senator, our state senator here in Virginia Beach. It is none other than Senator Rouse. So, Senator Rouse, first of all, I want to, again, thank you for being amenable to come on to the show, being available. I know that you're out there campaigning, and it's Get the Vote Out Sunday, so I know that you're going church to church and everywhere. You know, but I appreciate the time that you've given us. But before we go into your campaign and why you want us to vote for you for lieutenant governor, tell us a little bit about the campaign now, where you're at, what you've been doing, how you've been stomping the state, and what we can expect moving forward.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. You know, running statewide, you never really get to feel how big Virginia is until you run statewide. And as you know, I went to school out there at Virginia Tech, so it's been very, very well and good to go back out there in Southwest Virginia. And I've been out there numerous times making sure, you know, leaving no community behind, making sure every single Virginian has an opportunity to thrive. And, you know, I've been at this now over 12 months. We are, you know, still hitting strides and getting more and more momentum. Just, you know, not too long ago, Congressman Bobby Scott has endorsed our campaign, as well as Senator Luis Lucas has endorsed our campaign. Elaine Loria has endorsed our campaign, and we just secured the first speaker, woman speaker of the House, Eileen Philipor, has endorsed our campaign. And so we are steady building momentum. We feel very, very good about where we are. But as you know, it's not over until 7 p.m. Tuesday, June 17th, to those primary boxes, ballot boxes close. So I'm very excited about, where we are and the work that I've done. I'm the only candidate with the local and state experience and a proven effective record of serving the community. So I'll look forward to becoming the next lieutenant governor of Virginia.
Let's talk a little bit about that experience that you've spoken about. Now, of course, you had a career. You went to Virginia Tech, and of course, you had a career in the NFL. We've all seen the commercials. We all know that the longest interception in the history of Lambeau Field. It's good to be in the history books for especially good things. But yeah. with that, you came back home, right? You came back home and you said, I want to come back where I grew up, and I want to do something different. And you started on the local level. Tell us about that journey for you.
Yeah. Well, it's more so also not only come back and do something different, but it's having more of an impact, especially, coming from, born and raised in Norfolk, down there at Young Terrace and Young Park, and then moving to C-Tech in the city of Virginia Beach, where we've got, we're renowned for putting out stellar athletic talent as well as entrepreneurs. But I also wanted to make sure our kids understand you don't have to just be an entertainer, right? You don't have to just go off and play sports to be important or even be successful. And so I wanted to have a more of an impact from our community and show folks that, you can go out and serve on city council. You can be teachers and first responders and business owners, and that to me was, more important as well, is to come back and help the community that helped build me. It took a lot of different folks, all the way from Joe Austin in Norfolk to Coach Marsh Bucks and Jay Lane and Cadillac Harris and these folks to actually, invest in me. It took a community of teachers to invest in me and help me understand that, the world was much bigger than my neighborhood and the community that I grew up in. That with an education and or skill, I can go off and do successful, great things. So I am, served on city council and an effective record of getting things done, not only protecting voting rights, but getting the highest pay increase for our city staff and workers, passing a historical bond referendum to protect our infrastructure from flooding and sea level rise, invested in our summer youth employment program, built a basketball court and playground and Friendship Village and community where I was raised at. As well. And then when it came time to step up and protect women's rights, I stepped up and flipped the red district blue.
And that's not easy in the district that you're in. When you came home to Virginia Beach, it wasn't the Virginia Beach we know today, right? With the fair voting system, hopefully we get it into the charter. Hopefully the state can do something. That's another story. We'll talk about that in another radio show. But when you look at Virginia Beach, when you came back and ran for city council, and ran for the state senate, behind you came two other African American males for delegate.
Yeah.
And right now, the city of Virginia Beach has 3 African American males representing the city of Virginia Beach in the state legislature. Never happened before in the history of Virginia Beach.
Yeah. Yep. And that's what it's about. It's still being the first, right? We're in the 21st century. We're still being the first to do things, but it's also making sure that we provide pathways for other, young men and women to come and serve as well. And I think that's why I'm very humbled to have Congressman Bobby Scott support me. I mean, he's a giant, someone who has fought not only for civil rights, but has fought for the education funding as well. He helped create those pathways for young men like myself to come about. And so when I think of also, Virginia Beach and everyone's I think people pretty much know what it's like in Virginia Beach, but it was important also to change and develop and to move the city forward. And as you know, something in the water, and it was able to bring that down with something with Pharrell Williams and his first, and back in 2019, was able to get that festival. And And that opened a lot of eyes to what we can become. And we're still working to this day to celebrate all cultures, to welcome all people, and to show that we are an open community.
Look, not only that, but when you talk about, making a change, looking at your legislative impacts, when you talk about really stepping up to the plate, not just holding an office, some of the things that you've done. I mean, you not only went to college, played in the NFL, but you got your degree as well. I think that's very important.
That's right.
I think it's very important for people to realize, especially our youth. And with that, in your field of study, you also established the first social work advisory board. To tell us a little bit about that board and why you wanted to establish that.
Most important is our social workers don't get enough credit, nor do they make enough money. So I think it's always important that you continuously help those people who are doing the heavy lifting in our community, right? Who are making sure our youth and families have not only what they need, whether that's nutritional value or whether that's making sure they have a house over their head or making sure they can get to and from find, equitable employment. These are all important. So setting up that board was important to me. It's helping those who are helping our community. Once again, I was brought up and raised to believe it takes a village, right, to raise our babies. It takes a village to make sure our community is thriving. And so I was very proud to carry the legislation and to get it through. I think the other thing is what's most important is that in this day and age where we see, what's coming out of Washington, and we see the fact that there want to be also cuts to education and healthcare, and even, SNAP benefits, and even housing. That to me is we have to fight back against that. This is not the time to sit and stand on the sidelines. Like, we have to literally fight back against that and to make sure that the social safety net is here to protect our entire Commonwealth.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to get into your campaign platform in just a moment and really the job of Lieutenant Governor. But first, you mentioned what's happening in Washington. Draconian cuts to the budget, cuts to education, K through 12, higher education, cuts to SNAP, supplemental nutrition food programs, cuts to our pantries that provide, just a hand-up nutritious meals to make so people can, mend those gaps before the next paycheck comes in. Cuts to jobs, great federal jobs, but not just federal jobs, but also skilled workers that provide very important resources to all citizens of the country. But here in Hampton Roads, cuts to defense, cuts to veterans. What is your take on what the federal government is doing, and what are you looking to do as part of the Senate to help to fill that gap?
I mean, it's my take that, this president and his administration, they want to implement, a dictatorship that doesn't care about anybody other than the rich and oligarchs. And that's what it shows. I mean, not just in his rhetoric, but in his actions. And that is what we are fighting back against. I mean, people tend to think like, okay, this doesn't involve me until it affects them. And so all the things that you have already mentioned, it affects everyday life of everybody, regardless of what political, side of the aisle you fall on. If you don't have wealth or riches, it's coming for you. They're coming for you. And in fact, what so like, this administration wants to get rid of DEI and DEI hires, yet he hires people who are not even qualified to hold their position, whether that's the director of FBI or the Secretary of Defense. I mean, these people are not even qualified to hold their positions, and yet he wants to, along with the governor of Virginia, they want to appoint people to come in and erode the principles and values of our higher level learning institutions. And we're just not going to have that. So what I've done in the Senate already is pass the bill to protect our federal workers and independent contractors using the fullest extent of state's power. Pass legislation to support our military men and women in the community, helping them stay here. Do you have a Trump administration who wants to cut veterans' benefits? Can you imagine that he wants to cut benefits? And for our military men and women, that's just unfathomable. And so we want to make sure we protect our military men and women. We want to make sure we protect our small businesses. This Trump is playing with these tariffs, and they are putting small businesses out of business. And so, listen, we have our work cut out for us, but we have to make sure we stand up and fight back. And like I said in my commercial, if Trump comes through from Virginia, you got to go through me. Like, I'm just not inclined to sit back and watch this happen. I want to fight back, and I need everybody's support.
And the defense is still stout. It's Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Eric Claville, and you're joining us for our Get Out the Vote show as we conclude our 2025 primary election series this Tuesday. This Tuesday is official day of voting. Now, early voting started May 2nd, and it ended just yesterday. But on this Tuesday is an opportunity for you to go to the polls and vote for the candidate that you want to represent your party in the statewide election for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and also for 100 seats of House delegates. Now, there are some very important seats that are open and races in our local area. We've talked about and had our guest on for Commonwealth's attorney here in the city of Norfolk. We've also spoken with candidates for a treasurer in the city of Newport News, and we've spoken to other individuals that are running for local office. So make sure that your voice is heard. On this Tuesday, it is Election Day. Go to the polls and vote. Joining us, we have with us our state senator out of the city of Virginia Beach, none other than State Senator Aaron Rouse, who's vying for your vote to represent the Democratic Party on the ticket for lieutenant governor. Senator Rouse, let's get down to your platform. Now, we've had other candidates on the show for lieutenant governor. They've talked about the things that they want to do for Virginians if they're elected to that office. You've served on the city council. You've worked locally. You also have a nonprofit, Rouse's House, that does great things for teachers and also for students and families. But you also served in the state senate, and we've talked about a few of those legislative impacts that you've had. Now, the office of lieutenant governor. What is it that you want to do for Virginians in that office?
Well, thank you. I want to make sure I work for every single Virginian, regardless of what political aisle they stand on. I truly believe every single Virginian deserves an opportunity to thrive in our Commonwealth. And so not only I think we need to focus on affordable housing, but we need to invest in public education, invest in our small businesses, making sure there's an economy that works for everyone, but also making sure that we are protecting Virginians from what's coming out of Washington. And so, I am a fighter. I have the proven record that backs that up. I'm the only candidate with the local and state experience to back that up. And so, be a lieutenant governor that understands his way around the General Assembly, that has those relationships in order to get something done. And that's not to be, undervalued. You have to have relationships with your colleagues in order to get things done. And I've shown the capacity to lead in a bipartisan manner to do just that.
Now, let's talk about a few of the things in your platform. Again, for you to view this, those that are listening, simply go to rouseforvirginia.com. That's rouseforvirginia.com. That is his website. And he'll give you more information as well at the end of the show, where you can find out more information about him on the social media and the like. But rouseforvirginia.com. You talk about lowering costs for Virginia families and ensuring access to quality, affordable health care. Now, we mentioned earlier, the draconian cuts that are coming down the pipe by the Trump administration and the House Republicans and the Republican Senate and the Congress. And everything's going to roll downhill. It's coming for not just the Commonwealth of Virginia, but every state in the United States. With those challenges, how are you looking to balance that in your role as lieutenant governor to lower costs and provide that quality health care?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's important to understand that we have tools at our disposal that we can use, whether that's the earned income tax credit, extending those tax credits, as well as expanding the child tax credit as well. Also raising the minimum wage here in Virginia. And when it comes to, the housing issue, making sure that we can put more housing credits out there, I think that is important in what we have to do. And this is why, I'm very excited and honored and proud to have Senator Louise Lucas, endorsement. That's arguably, the most powerful woman in our General Assembly, because
Absolutely.
she chairs our Senate Finance Committee. And so when we're talking about, these issues of whether it's health care, lowering costs, finding tax relief, and investing in our education, it's important to have the person who holds the purse strings on your side. Mm-hmm. And that is what I look forward to doing, continue doing as Lieutenant Governor.
Absolutely. And of course, Commonwealth of Virginia is one of those states that accepted the affordable health care access to help lower prices and provide health care to many Virginians. And according to some reports, we have a few 100,000 Virginians that possibly could lose health care if these cuts go through from the Trump administration. As Lieutenant Governor, what can you do, or what can you help to guide the Senate in doing to help this ease this blow?
I think first of all, you have every 2 years we vote for congressional districts, right? We vote for Congress, and we have Congresswoman who represents us in CD, Second Congressional District, who they've all said we're not going to cut Social Security, we're not going to touch Medicaid, right? And yet they've all voted, all state, all federal congressional folks voted for Medicaid cuts, health care cuts, Social Security cuts. They all voted for Trump's big, beautiful bill. So they've lied to the people of Virginia. And now it's up to us in the state to make sure we can protect Virginia from these harmful cuts. But Dr. Claville, you know as well as I know, healthcare is expensive.
Absolutely.
Right? It is really expensive. And we're going to have to find somehow they trigger the Medicaid trigger laws in the healthcare. Over 630,000 Virginians could lose their healthcare, which equates to approximately $2.6 billion. Billion with the B. $1 billion that we would have to find. That's just incredibly difficult and hard to do. And so one of the things I'm most proud of and excited about is that for future Governor Abigail Spanberger, she wrote out her health care plan. The key centerpiece of that plan was legislation that I wrote and passed and got signed, and that was the Save Local Pharmacies Act. And that was to rein in pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs. They are the ones who tell you which prescriptions they're going to pay for and what they're not going to pay for. And in fact, they are the ones that inflate the prices of drug and prescription costs. And so my piece of legislation will rein them in, right? We passed that bill. We'll rein them in. In fact, did it in a bipartisan manner and made it very, very hard for Governor Youngkin to veto that bill. That's how it got signed because, again, relationships matter.
That's right.
When you're going to be Lieutenant Governor. And so the next step of that is to implement it. And so whether you live in Southwest Virginia or Central Virginia, Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, this bill is going to make sure you can keep more of the money that you earn by lowering your health care and prescription costs. That's the first step. Not only that, it goes far enough to save approximately $39 million in its first year. And so we have to make sure we are finding every single solution and option on the table to protect Virginians. And as your Lieutenant Governor, I understand what that means because when we enact laws at the state level, I understand what that means for the localities at the local level because I served in local office. And so I'm looking forward to continue to protect Virginians, but also fighting back. Like the biggest thing we can do right now is not only vote in this primary, but vote in such numbers that we carry momentum into the midterm so we can win back Congress.
Absolutely. When you as a state senator, you also are protecting the federal workforce. As we mentioned earlier in the conversation today, unfortunately, there are a lot of families that got a 3-sentence email and said their services were no longer needed and were locked out.
Right.
I mean, just to level, I don't care who you are, Republican, Democrat, Independent, old, young, I don't care. That's just disrespectful for anyone that's given their time and their career, to our civil service for our country. But you signed some legislation to strengthen protections for them. To tell us what you did for our federal workers and contractors.
Absolutely. When there were talks to Republicans when they were willing to shut down the country, and allowing our federal workers to go without a paycheck, to make sure that they were allowing our federal workers to possibly lose their homes. I wasn't going to allow that. I wasn't going to sit back and allow that. So I passed legislation to protect our federal workers and independent contractors in case they got furloughed. But I also went far enough to try and get more money into our workers' our compensation, get money more work into if workers would have got fired from their job, money into that, but Republicans weren't having that, right? And we have the numbers for that, and that was vetoed. But it's showing them that, again, we have to, fight back against that. One of the things that was really disheartening to watch is Donald Trump and Elon Musk. In fact, I still don't think Doge had the authority to go in and do what they did. Right. Even though the Supreme Court gave them access to IRS data, which is insane to me. It's the way Trump did these things. It's the way they did these things. Civil servants don't pick a side. They don't choose a side. They just do the work. And quite frankly, there's a lot of politicians who are elected who don't even fully understand the work, wouldn't even be able to speak, on an issue or a matter without civil servants. These are the people who keep our country and communities going. And for Trump to just fire them or lock them out, that's un-American. It's just unfathomable. The other thing is, I think it helped a lot of folks realize how important collective bargaining is and how important unions are, because it was the unions and collective bargaining folks and lawyers who were able to get them back their jobs, to get them access back to their departments. And so that's one highlight and one way of looking at it.
Absolutely. It seems like every time you and I get on a call together, time just flies by. so we've got literally probably 120 seconds left on the air. So what I want to do, I want to give this opportunity to you. Like I say, you've been a friend to university, a friend to me, and a friend to all the constituents that you represent. And I want you to have the last word to tell the audience why they should vote for you for Lieutenant Governor, the job that you'll do, and where they can find more information about you.
Thank you. You all should vote for me because I have a proven record and an effective record of getting things done. I am a man of my word. I follow through on it, and I'm an effective leader. Please, you can go to rouseforvirginia.com right now to find out more information about my campaign. Early voting is this Saturday, the 14th, and if you haven't voted yet, please vote before Saturday. And if you don't want to early vote, you have until Tuesday, June 17th, primary day to vote. I humbly ask you for your vote. The hometown kid here, please vote for me. And thanks for always having this platform, Dr. Claville.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, election this Tuesday. This Tuesday, make sure your voice is heard. Make sure you go to the poll. Go to the polls where you normally vote on Election Day and cast your vote. Polls will be open until 8 p.m. For those of you that are working late, for those that want to get there early, polls open at 7 a.m. Make sure you get there and make sure your vote counts. And listen, don't just go by yourself, but take a friend with you. And then, again, go out and vote on the big day, General Election Day on November 4th. But we'll talk about that later. But make sure your vote is cast in this primary election. Because our democracy is worth it. Once again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are out there. Make sure if you have your father, make sure you love them and appreciate them for all that they do. And once again, thank you for joining us here on Stay the Water, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. This ends our 2025 primary election series. And when we come back, we'll have a full slate of candidates in the November election. Until next time, be good, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.